Hi, I'm Brenna Fender, and I have a confession to make. I use lures in my dog training. I have forever. I started luring in dog training when I was 10 years old and got my first dog, which was a really long time ago. Way too long ago. And I've always liked using lures in training, even though it's not the end thing to do right now. But it really works for me. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, when you're using lures in dog training, you're like maybe you're holding a treat in your hand and you're like helping your dog get into position by like using the treat like a magnet and pulling them into position. Or maybe you're using a target, you have like food or a toy or something that your dog is trained to go to and they go to that spot. That's a lure. Those are lures. And the problem with using lures is that generally you can't have a treat in your hand or you can't have a target in whatever your final behavior is. So even though I've used lures in training dogs to trick titles, I have a trick dog champion, for example, or upper level agility titles, or even rally titles or obedience titles. Those things you can't have your lures with you. So you have to figure out how to start with a lure but not finish your behavior with a lure. And that process is called fading. That's fading a lure. So, an integral part of training with lures and other props, like, for example, wires or guides on your weave poles, is knowing how to fade them out of the picture. You've probably know someone whose dog only does a trick when they have the treat in their hand, or only comes when called when they're holding a snack, things like that. Well, that's because the treat has never been faded from the picture of the cue that has been given. And so fading the lure or the reward in that case, because it's still a lure. It's still luring them into the behavior. So that's an important part of the process, and it's a part that the trainer in that scenario has missed. So I put together a webinar about how, why and how you fade lures and props from your training, because that's a very important step of dog training. If you're going to use lures and props, you have to know how to get them out of the picture. So if you're having trouble, say you have a dog that that only does a behavior when you're holding treats or wearing your bait bag, or that only does the contact properly and does their 2 on 2 off when your treat and train is at the bottom, for example, or can only do the weave poles when there's a target at the end, things like that, then you might want to check out my webinar. I think that I'll have some ideas for you that will help you out, not only in your current dilemma, but going forward in using lures in and other props in your training. So I hope that you'll join me in the Clean Run Learning Center for my webinar about fading lures and props. Thanks for listening. I hope to see you there.